Welcome to the Next Gen Podcast. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Bryson Wright and Alex Winton. They got next, so let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome into the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I'm joined by my co-host, Alex Winton. And we got a lot of good stuff to get to in this last week of basketball for the Grizzlies. Went 2-2 over the last 4 games, playing with the Bulls and Timberwolves, and then beating both the Raptors and then beating the Heat on the road. So some very good stuff in those last 2 games that I want to get to first. And the first thing that I wanted to get to is we got to talk about Vince Williams Jr., man. If you look at the way that he's played, this is the first time in his career he's had 6 straight games where he's been in double figures. This is a dude who just got signed this year. And it's, in my opinion, if you look at the contract, if he keeps playing like this, he is going to be on the most valuable contract in the NBA. This man is going to be making $7 million over the next 4 years. And you could argue that he would deserve that $7 million every year, if not more, if he's playing at this level, right? So shout out to him for playing like that over the last 6 games. 18 points per game, 55% from the field, 47% from 3, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and almost 2 steals per game. So he's kind of just doing everything on both ends. It kind of reminds me of he kind of does a lot of the stuff that DeAnthony Melton used to do for the Grizzlies. Except I think that he's also adding in better rebounding. I feel like he's a little bit taller. And I think he's even been a better shooter as of late than DeAnthony was when he was here. But I felt like when the Grizzlies traded DeAnthony Melton, got Danny Green back in that pick, you know, it turned into Luke Kennard, but they still haven't had another person that can really come in and cause those deflections the way that DeAnthony Melton did when he was on the team, the way that Kyle Anderson did when he was on the team. And I think that adding Vince Williams Jr. in that role, especially these last, 5-6 games and, since the injuries and he's really been in this starting lineup, I think we've started to see like how the Grizzlies, especially like forcing turnovers, getting out on the fast break, that's been a huge part of their offense. And I think a lot of that is because of how Vince Williams Jr. has been playing. So shout out to Vince Williams Jr., man. I think that obviously the Grizzlies have locked him up for the next 4 years already, but this is a guy that has to be a rotation piece going forward, going into next season and beyond. Like, there's no question about that. The Grizzlies have had like a lot of issues. Like coming in, we were like, who is going to replace Dylan Brooks? And it really seems like Vince has been the guy more than anybody else that can actually replace the production on defense, along with having, even more efficient scoring than Dylan had last year. So I feel like he's done a really good job of replacing that energy that they were definitely missing at the beginning of the season too.
Yeah. I think with Vince, I think the thing is about with Vince, he is probably, like I said, he kind of reminds me of Melton. Like I said, I think I even said it with Melton that like he's basically like, I thought he was gonna get the Melton deal in a sense. Like I was saying that, like when he was playing well, I was like, and the Melton deal was like, I think it was like 4 years, 34 million. I forgot how much it was, but something like along those lines. What was I gonna say? So basically, yeah. So I thought he was gonna get more than that, but when that first deal initially came out, it was kind of like, oh, like like I was kind of surprised at what he got, or like what contract he got. But then when I realized that that's the most that he probably could have gotten because of the the years and him being a 2-way, it made sense. But like you said, if he keeps playing like this, obviously he will have a high value contract. And I mean, that's what kind of Grizzlies kind of do. Like that's kind of their MO. Like they kind of get guys at a lower price for whatever reason may be. Like even with Jaren, like Jaren's an all-star guy, defense player of the year, and they got him making like $25 million. Like now, like, and I think Cam Johnson's making the same money. And now, no disrespect to Cam Johnson, but I mean, he's not an all-star. Like, yeah, I mean, all-star. Like, most all-star, all-NBA guys or defensive player of the year guys make like 30, 35 million now. So, like, you got him at a lower contract. Brandon Clark, some people said he should have got more money before, obviously before he got hurt. So, like, those type of things, I think, that's what they do best. But Vince has been playing well. Again, I think a lot of it, honestly, to me, I said it earlier. I think I said it yesterday. A lot of this looks like his VCU tape, and and I was trying to be more funny about it, but in seriousness, it is like his VCU tape. Like he's doing a lot of the same things, but at VCU, he was more on the ball. You saw a little bit more creation. You saw a little bit more driving. Like that one move, again, like in Toronto, the Toronto game where I think he had like a double cross into a dunk. I'm like, okay, man, like I ain't really, I really expect those type of things from Vince Williams. Not granted, I knew Vince Williams like could play, but like I knew he's more than just a catch and shoot guy. I think he's like his main role is like a catch and shoot connector, where like he's gonna make the right read, but like he's showing a little bit more in terms of scoring, and that's where I really been wanting to see out of him because again, obviously, I want him to make shots and defend mainly, but I wanted to see his 2-point percentage go up because at first for like before these 6 games, he was shooting like 38% from the field and 38 or 36% from like 3, which is, not really great. Like 36 from 3 is good, but like 38% from the field is not. And so now he's starting to be more efficient. Like over his last 4 games, I think he shot last game like 80%, the game before 63, the other game 55. So like he's starting to get more efficient, starting to get more comfortable. You're starting to see a little bit more in his in-between game. Again, the rebounding and a little bit of the playmaking has gone up just because the usage has gone up. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's been playing well. Again, and obviously, even the games where he's only had like 10 points, his impact is still felt. So, yeah, no, I mean, I think he's showing that he's a real rotation piece. And now you're adding a rotation piece on that type of contract, and he's under contract for the next 4 years. Is really good value because now you can start to obviously, which I don't know when they will make more moves, but eventually they will. You have a guy under a lower budget that helps you have more flexibility going forward to make other moves to add around that. So yeah, shout out to Vince. No, he's been hooping. That's been one of the main things I've been saying. Like things I care about is how are Vince and Gigi going to develop? Obviously, Jaren's development in certain areas. And so yeah, no, Vince has kind of really been stepping up the last couple games, especially last game.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with Vince, it's been awesome to just see the way that obviously coming out of ECU, he had some of that tape, but the biggest thing was going to be how was it going to translate? I felt like everybody kind of knew his defense would translate, but everything he's been doing on the offensive end, like I don't think anybody saw him being like over these last 6 games, he's been averaging 18 a game. And I'm not saying he's going to do that the rest of the season, but I don't think there's a lot of people that even coming out of college would have said they saw him as a guy that could put up numbers like that. And I mean, when you look at and the way he's doing it, I feel like it's very sustainable. It's not like he's, making a ton of tough shots that he can't make. I mean, he's taking open threes. He's been super efficient. Like in that last game, he was 8 out of 10, which was just an awesome, like that's awesome efficiency. So if he's going to be playing like at that level, that changes like the timeline and kind of what the Grizzlies can do. And I also think we got to give some credit because talking about Vince Williams Jr. and now talking about Gigi Jackson as well, because I'm going to get to him next. But we got to give credit to Zach Kleiman because even though he hasn't hit on all his first round picks, to get Gigi and Vince in the second round, those were 2 really like high upside picks that I think he did a really good job getting those 2 guys. So shout out to him for that. I think obviously you can criticize him for other things, but you got to keep it fair both ways, right? So if you criticize a guy for missing on a pick in the first round, you also have to give him credit for finding 2 guys that honestly so far could be starting caliber players in the NBA at 45 and 47 in the draft. Like you don't see that a ton. So shout out to him for that. And then I want to give a shout out to, like I said, Gigi Jackson. I'm on the start Gigi agenda now, man. At this point in the season, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Like, get him as many reps as possible. Throw him out there with other good players. I know maybe you're like, okay, you bring him there, then you don't have anything off the bench. I don't care. I want to see what the Gigi and Jaren front court looks like. I would like to see it for more minutes because when they played it in Miami down the stretch of that game, and it was basically, I know it was Jaren and Tillman were out there too, but like having Gigi and Jaren out there at the same time, I felt like that was really good. And I felt like that lineup worked really well with all of them, along with Scotty Pippen Jr. as well, who also had a great game. We'll get to him in a little bit as well. But for me, the biggest thing about Gigi has been his ability to just knock down the three ball. Because in college, obviously he could shoot, and I think that he was a good shooter. Like, there's not a question of if he could make a three, but could he do it consistently and efficiently was the main issue. But I always go back to when you talk about looking at Gigi's college tape, a lot of the times when he was shooting those threes, they were either off the dribble, like he didn't have like every time Gigi Jackson went into a game, he was number one on the scouting report at South Carolina, and he didn't have a lot of help. So a lot of those threes, and you look at his percentages, you would be like, oh, he can't shoot. But it's like, yeah, but he doesn't shoot that percentage on wide open catch and shoot threes. You know, they might be like, oh, he only shot 30% or whatever it was. That wasn't on catch and shoot open threes. And if you see so far this season, especially on those catch and shoot threes, he's been automatic, man. And in that last game, he was automatic as well, playing against Miami. It really felt like he was, I mean, in a game that had, Duncan Robinson on the other side, it felt like he was shooting just as well as a guy like Duncan Robinson was. So that was just awesome to see for him. And I think that's the number one thing for him. If he can be a real catch and shoot guy, that gives him the ability to play with, Ja, Jaren, Bane, and all of them a lot more when they do get back in next season and going forward. So if he can knock down that catch and shoot three, along with everything else he can do as like a rim protector and putting the ball on the floor, I think that's going to be awesome for him just because it makes him more versatile in the lineups you can play him with. So you can play him with your other guys, and he doesn't necessarily have to have the ball in his hands. Or if you are going to bring him off the bench, he can be like the lead guy in the bench unit. He can really be like the sixth man or the microwave scorer that can come off the bench, get to the rim and draw fouls and stuff like that, which he's done a really good job of. So yeah, Gigi Jackson, I said it like probably if you've been listening to this, we've been talking about Gigi since the summer league. And I've been saying it, man. I think Gigi Jackson, when you look at it in a couple years, he's going to be a steal in this draft class. I think if he had never reclassified, he'd be a top 5 pick in the draft coming up. And there's a lot of draft people out there that would say the same. So that's insane value for him. They're going to have to, sign him to a regular contract at the end of this season, which I know some people have been talking about the conversation of if he'll be signed to a regular contract or stay on a two-way. I think they might as well just sign him to a regular contract next year because if he can continue to play at this level, he's going to be in the rotation.
Yeah, no question. I mean, they're not going to play around with that. That's another part of the reason why you said start GG, which is I don't think will happen. Is again, this is me going off of theories, and again, people gonna be like, well, these two people started. I don't think they're gonna start him until they actually convert his contract, whether that happens this year or in the off season. In terms of like the season, yeah, because he is a restricted free agent, and while nobody's gonna offer crazy amount of money, the Grizzlies are trying to get these guys as cheap as possible. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, hey, let's not start the dude because if he starts playing too well, we have to give him too much money that hurts our cap flexibility. Again, that's I won't say dirty game. That's just the game. The game is the game. I like to say that a lot. The game is the game. So I don't see it. I'm not against it. I just don't see it because of that. Now, let's say they make some trades at the deadline, they convert them. Oh yeah, they probably start them. Or maybe at the end of the year where, if they feel like they're out too far out of the play-in race, guys not coming back, they could say, hey, we're going to start him even if without a contract. But, I'm here for it because, again, ultimately that's kind of the upside for him is can he be the starting three? And, again, it's all going to come down to what you said. I mean, I think that's going to all come down to the shooting, like how sustainable is the shooting because, again, while as good as I think Gigi is and why you are correct, I do think he'll be a lottery like type guy when you do like a redraft or anything in this draft because a lot of people said he'd be a lottery guy in the next draft. It's all gonna come down to shooting because again, while he is good and has the upside, we got to remember, this is still Jaren Bane's team. So he first, and we've seen with guys before, even if you have that lottery upside, you got to fit with what's already there. You're not going to get 20 shots right away. So like that's what he's been able to do. He's had structure this whole year in terms of being able to play with other people and not be the main focal guy, like the main focal point. And now he's had to learn how to do more catch and shoot stuff, learn how to do more, or not necessarily learn how to do it, but do it more consistently. So that's why I think the catch and shoot stuff is all gonna come down to that. Like, can he continue to be this type of catch and shoot player? Because if he shoots like this, I'm not saying he's gonna shoot. I can't remember what he's shooting in the season. I think it's something crazy. Like he's shooting, I think, 50% from three right now. So like that's kind of absurd. 50% from three is really insane. So I don't expect that type of shooting, but like if it's like 36 to like 38 at least, that's gonna open up everything else. Because if he's gonna be more of a catch and shoot player around those guys, then and be more of like a play finisher, play out of pick and roll where he's finishing lobs and stuff like that. Then you get into the creation stuff second. That's where I think he's gonna be best at. Like I kind of like again, I'm not saying he's these players or he can't be better than these players, whatever, but kind of like what Denver has with Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon, those type of guys, how they fit around Murray and Jokic, and basically being guys that either catch and shoot or guard multiple positions. Like that's what you want. So I'm not saying he needs to do exactly what they do, but those certain skills, like the type of same skill set in that same body at the same forward position. So last game was really good. And again, he's doing this off the bench too. So like I do like how he is doing this off the bench. Again, a lot of it's not like high usage, a lot of it's scalable stuff. You always want guys to be scalable. Same thing. That's the really biggest thing about GG, but also Vince. Like they're doing this stuff without really taking away from like having high usage. Like they don't need the ball in their hands to do all this a lot. And so, as long as they can play within the flow of the system and imagine how they're gonna look. They're only with Jaren right now. Imagine how they're gonna look when you have Bane back in the fold, Job back in the fold, stuff like that. And so I do think that it's gonna benefit them. These reps are priceless, especially now that you're winning games. I know people have the conversation about the Grizzlies winning games and like they don't need to win too many games. Don't worry about the wins and losses. Please do not be like, oh, they need to lose this amount of games to get this pick, or they win too many games. We're not gonna like. It doesn't matter. Like it's about how the process looks. If they win games, cool. If they don't win games, cool. It's about the reps at this point. For considering the context, that's what it's about. So if they win games, cool. I would like for them to win games just so they can see that the win, like the stuff that they're doing is translatable to winning in games that matter. Because next year, like you said, if they're all both, I think he'll be on the contract next year. So like, and while I do think he can be in the rotation next year, you don't want to depend. Well, let me not say this. I'm not saying you can't depend on him, but you don't want to depend on him, but you want him in a rotation somehow, some way, right? And same with Vince. Like I think both of them would be in a rotation somehow, some way, especially Vince. But my point is, like, you want them to get used to playing meaningful games now, because when everybody's healthy, they're going to play meaningful games. It's not like this team's going to be like 20 wins, like a 20-25 win team when everybody's back. That's just not going to happen. Like I know that for sure. That's not going to happen. They were on like a 40-game win pace with Jaja and the Bane alone, and that roster was still bad. So you know what I mean? So like it's better to get these reps now, so that way, again, when they setting the tone for next year, they get into next year, they're this is not new to them. So shout out to GG.
Yeah, for sure. And then staying with the two-way vibes, got to talk about Scotty Pippen Jr. In that last game, 15.6 rebounds, 6 assists. Talking about like who we think should start. I'm not going to say that after one game, Scotty Pippen Jr. should instantly be a starter, but I think if he can plays at that level, like I think he could definitely start for the team, like with all the injuries they've got out right now. But I like the role that he played coming off the bench, and I did also like that Coach Jenkins stuck with him and closed with him, and also closed with GG at the end of that Heat game, and I think that was really good. To have both of those guys out there. Scotty Pippen Jr. made a couple of clutch buckets. And I think it's just, as much as Jacob Gilyard, I think, is a good passer and, does some good things as like a catch and shoot guy, he doesn't have the ability to just take his man off the dribble and go to the rim and either score or, have one of those nice kick out passes like Scotty Pippen Jr. had to Vince in the corner when he hit that, basically the game clinching three. Or maybe not game clinching, but it kind of felt like the dagger. Right. And Gilyard, he can do that. He's a good passer, but he doesn't have that same threat of going to the rim as a guy like Scotty Pippen Jr. has. So the defense is more, I feel like, sitting on those passes instead of collapsing the defense around, which is what you saw from Miami when Scotty Pippen Jr. drove to the basket. And even when he did collapse the defense, he did also still have a couple of nice baskets, nice drive to the rim, and finishes at the rim as well. So he just like a true point guard type game for him. I thought that was awesome to see him in his first minutes, not just for the Grizzlies, but like in the NBA. Like, he's played some games here and there in the NBA, but he hasn't had many games where he's playing, 15, 20 plus minutes in the NBA just in general. Had his career high in points as well. And it's just awesome to see. Obviously, the son of an NBA legend. I feel like there's a lot of pressure whenever you're the son of somebody on like Scottie Pippen's caliber of guy. So Hall of Famer, all-time great, all like that. They expect you to be really good. And even though he hasn't had like the traditional route maybe to get into the NBA, he's been in the G League, two-way contract, stuff like that. Maybe wasn't like a high draft pick. I think that he definitely has this opportunity now to where if he continues to play at this level, I think he could stay on the Grizzlies and maybe still be on a two-way, or maybe they even convert his contract into offseason. Or even if it's not for the Grizzlies, I mean, if you're another NBA team, watching the way that he played last night, you got to think like, hey, he's not going to be demanding a ton of money. He'll be on a cheaper deal. Why not bring him in to be your third point guard? You know what I mean? If you're going to run 3-point guards on your team. So I think for him, it's good. It's good to see him kind of take this opportunity. And I do think that if he keeps this up, I mean, there's a chance that he starts against the Magic. I'm not 100% sure on that because I still feel like he probably still needs to learn some more of the schemes and stuff like that. But once he continues to kind of get acclimated, I would not be surprised if he ends up starting some games for the Grizzlies down the stretch.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me at least, I've always known about Scotty Pippen Jr. I mean, just because I keep up with who, and he also went to Vanderbilt. That's kind of like, I mean, he's right. As a national native, I keep up with every basically Tennessee basketball team, like for the most part. So I saw him at Vanderbilt. I thought he was a good player. Like I thought he could be a pro. Like I mean, I remember when he played even in high school at Sierra Canyon. Like so, like I always thought I was kind of high on. I wouldn't say I thought he was like a lottery pick or something, but I thought he could have been like a late first or early second rounder guy. So kind of going undrafted. I wouldn't say surprised me, but it happens. Like it is what it is. Like just because you don't get drafted doesn't mean you're not a first round type of talent or caliber player. Sometimes it all comes down to situation, what teams are looking for. Sometimes teams miss. It happens. But yeah, no, I thought he was a good player for the most part. And I thought he was gonna have more opportunity with the Lakers, but obviously that didn't happen. So when we first got him, I was like, okay, like this is a good signing to me. I know people are complaining about the big spot, but you're not probably going to get any valuable big at the two-way spot. That just usually doesn't happen. And for this team, they didn't really need a big on a two-way contract. They need to trade for a big that needs to be a sustainable like player, like that can be like that's either on a contract like that's longer than 2 years or like that's already been an NBA player, or if not, it needs to be with your potential quote unquote lottery pick. So I thought he was a good signing, but again, obviously, I did want to see him play early on before this game. But again, like you said, it's probably because hey, he hasn't learned the system. They did that with Bismack early when he played. Like he only played. I didn't play. I think he played like the first 2 games, and then after that, he started like the 3rd game. So, I do think with Scotty Pippen Jr. I mean, I do think he's a really like high IQ guy. But again, like a lot of it's he's just doing simple stuff. Like it's really making simple reads to me. Like from what I saw yesterday, like he had open shots. He took them. He was defending. And then, he was able to attack off the basket. I think that's really kind of the biggest thing. I've been talking about creating advantages all season. And I keep telling y'all, look, the offense, there's a reason why the offense is the way the offense is, because there's not a lot of people that can create advantages or finish at the rim. And he did both of those. He was able to attack off the dribble. And not only he attacked off the dribble, he actually made layups. So that opened up everything else in this game. And obviously he made some nice passes. And, again, just make some big plays. So, yeah, no, I do expect his role to continue to grow, obviously considering the situation. And I do think he will eventually be on this team. Now, I don't think it'll be this year. Like, I mean, they signed him to the two-way. Like, I think he'll be on the two-way next year. But I think going into not next season, but the season after, I could see him being basically what you signed Rose to be in a sense, like the third guard, quote unquote. Well, in theory, the third guard, if they scheme it that way. If you're counting Marcus Smart as like the secondary backup ball handler, whatever you want to call it, or as a point guard, quote unquote. I think he could take that role of D Rose's spot. Not to say D Rose be off the roster, but simply saying he could fill in for that spot. Because we know Rose is more of a guy that's been signed for mentorship than actually playing at this point, which is not a bad thing. You need those Udonis Haslem type guys, but that's just the reality. So yeah, no, I mean, I think he played well last night. Again, I think his role is going to continue to increase. I don't know if he starts next game, just because, like you said, scheme stuff, and also I don't know. I don't know what I feel like Jenkins is trying anything at this point just to see what sticks. So I'm not gonna give it. Look, you know me, I give Jenkins a lot of criticism. I've been defending him this year, but I do give him a lot of criticism. But I ain't gonna judge the lineups right now too much. I just care about GG Vince playing, Jaren getting development, and maybe now Scotty playing a little bit more. But outside of that, I ain't gonna really trip right now. I'm not gonna trip too much. Yeah, I hope he continues to play, and I do think he will start. I just don't know when. But it all depends though, when people come back and this and that. But yeah, he played well, and I hope he continues to play well. Because again, if he continues to play well, and you get like a piece here, two back, and this and that, like I'm not saying they're gonna make the plan. That's not what I'm going to say. But people just thought dead in the water they were just gonna lose all these games. And again, like I said, don't look at the wins and losses, but also don't be like mad when they win either. It's good that they're winning and playing meaningful games. Like that matters. Like you should never be pro tank, because you never, especially if you're talking about from a lottery perspective, you never get rewarded for being pro tank. That just never happens. I could go down a little.
That's why I always try to tell people this is not the NFL. This is not the NFL where you're the worst team, you automatically get the number one pick. Like when you look at a lot of these teams, like the year that the Grizzlies got Ja, I always go back to it. The year the Grizzlies got Ja, they were supposed to get the 8th or 9th pick. Most people going into the draft were hoping they would just go ahead and get rid of that pick that was supposed to go to the Celtics. They were like, let's hope it's a lower pick so we can go ahead and get it out the way, give it to the Celtics, and move on. There's a lot of people saying that, right? Then you get lucky. All of a sudden, you get the number 2 pick. And then even this year, even like that, I can see them being around that same kind of level, even if they are the 8th or 9th team. Because I think, like you said, I think they're going to win games, and there are teams behind them like the Spurs, the Pistons, the Trailblazers. Like those teams are not going to win games. They're not going to win games, man. So the fact that you are and you're already so far ahead of them, just from the games that they won when Ja was on the team, and even when they started 0-6 and were one of the worst teams in the NBA, those first 25 games. They still had more wins in those first 25 games than the Pistons have today. So, it's like that. Like, so you might say, oh, well, they need to tank so they get a better draft pick. Like, it doesn't matter. You're not going to get the best odds. They could lose out from today. They could lose out the rest of the season, and they probably still would get at max top 3 odds. They still want to have the best odds just because of how bad some of the other teams behind them are. So I think it's definitely way better to see the development from, Vince, Gigi, adding in Scotty Pippen Jr. Even, getting to showcase other guys who might be on the trade block as well. Or, showcase some guys that maybe if they're not going to be playing for the Grizzlies might be trying to, play for their basketball lives and their careers. So giving guys a chance to do all of that, I think that's definitely much better, and I think it still fits with the team's culture. And honestly, I think just in history, and maybe it's just me, but when you look at history, a lot of the time, it's never the team that has the worst record that actually gets the number 1 pick. Usually, especially since they've added these new rules, these anti-tanking rules, it seems like the NBA and the lottery rewards the teams that are not blatantly tanking, right? So I'm fine with them winning these games. I'm always cool with them winning games. Like that's what you do. This is the NBA. What happens with that draft pick happens. It's a lottery. People play the lottery every day.
Wait, hold on. Let me say this. I do, but this is my conspiracy theory. I do think it's rigged. Again, I can go down this line.
Yes.
I ain't gonna spend on too much, but it is a little rigged. So the legal, but like you said, it's basically what you said. The league will mess with you when you don't blatantly tank. When you blatantly tank, they don't mess with you. Look what the Pistons did last year. They had the worst record in the league. You know where they fell to? 5th. So you don't want to do that. I promise you don't want to do that. They don't mess with teams like, oh, we're just gonna sit there. No. So you want to win games. Not saying they're gonna mess with it this year for some other reason, whatever. But you know what I mean? You sure definitely not gonna have a chance if you're trying to blatantly tank. Like they sat Jaren, people's like, oh, you gotta sit Jaren, and after Bane got hurt and Smart got hurt, we gotta sit Jaren. Like, no, they're not gonna do that. Rules wise, they can't do that. Like just off the all-star, the load management stuff. So yeah, but continue. That's all I was saying. Just gonna say it's a little bit rigged. So yeah.
No, I mean, I definitely think when it comes to the draft lottery, man, like the fact that the Spurs got the number 1 pick last year, so like the NBA is going to protect their biggest assets, and they saw Victor Wembanyama as an asset. We are sending this man to Greg Popovich. You know what I mean? This dude is from France. He grew up wearing Tony Parker's jersey, like all of that. It just worked too well. Like, and there are a couple times. The Pelicans getting the number 1 pick the year right after they trade Anthony Davis, and then also the Grizzlies getting the number 2 pick that year.
Two smallest markets, and then the 2 biggest markets got 3 and 4.
Exactly.
I'm just saying.
Look, I'm just saying. Hey, look, I'm with you. I'm 100% with you on that, man. But I do feel like just in general, the NBA will reward you if you don't take. So I think it's good that these last couple games, like I said, that Raptors game, it really felt like they controlled that game all the way through. Same with that Heat game. And to see them do that, I think that still gives you – I think the experience you're getting right now with Vince and Gigi and these guys, and even Jaren playing with, more defensive attention on him and being number 1 on the scouting report for at least the next probably now 4 weeks until Bane comes back, which we'll see what happens with that, if he comes back then or if he'll be out longer. But he's like the number 1 guy on the scouting report. He is the guy. I think the experience you get from that is going to be just as valuable, if not more valuable, than whatever pick you get. And like I said, even if you continue to win some games, it's still the draft lottery. That's why the NBA has it as a lottery. You never know what can happen. So that's what I always say. Tanking is one thing, but I'm never down for the tank, man. So I'm 100% down with this team doing what they're doing. I love the way that they continue to fight through everything like that, because it would have been very easy for these guys to just come into these games, especially that Miami Heat game. You're on the road against a team that's been to the finals multiple times, that's mostly healthy. I know they just made that trade for Terry Rozier. I know that Jaime Jaquez Jr. wasn't playing, and that's a big loss for them. But, I mean, still, compared to the Grizzlies, like, come on, man. Like, going into that game, they got Jimmy Butler, they got Bam Adebayo, they got Tyler Hero. They just added Terry Rozier, and Terry Rozier hates the Grizzlies. He didn't have a great game in Miami, but he's had, I think, 3 or 4 30-point games against the Grizzlies in his career. So, like, they had a lot of guys. And for you to go in there when they have their city edition court that says they're the most hard-working, nastiest team in the NBA and all that, and you go in there and you get a win, and Vince Williams Jr. outplays Jimmy Butler, like, that is, like, the value you get from that and the confidence that I think these guys are getting, I think is going to be more valuable than if you had them out there, lackadaisical running out. You're sitting Jaren down and just letting whatever happen. Like, I feel like this experience is going to be way better just for the team in general.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think again, like it's all gonna benefit them in the end. Like I always say, everything for the most part. I mean, I say in life too, but like a lot of things happen for a reason. Obviously you might not know the reason at that point, but it all for it's all gonna go according to plan how it's supposed to go. Like I said it back then, even with the whole. I remember when we won those games, and I was like, oh yeah, like they're not tanking, but they end up getting Ja. And then, obviously Jaren got hurt that year. I think not the year after. Was it the year after? No, it was the second year of their tenure. Ja's second season. He got hurt, and then, they ended up, getting better stuff out of it and stuff like that. Like this year, same thing. Like Ja's hurt, ain't been hurt, everybody's been hurt. So something's gonna happen good out of it, whether that's the development of the players, the assets get better, whatever, because of a pick, whatever the case may be. It's gonna work out how it's supposed to. I'm not really too worried about that because again, like it's the progress, and like I always say, even the GM said, the progress is not linear. You got to trust the process. Like it's all part of it. Like they could be very worse off. I think people, again, I always say, people forget where this franchise was in 2017 to 2018. I would like for y'all to go look at all those teams, the records, what people were saying, and I want you to compare it to now. Yes, it's a bad season, or yes, it's a quote-unquote season from hell, as everybody likes to call it. But every time somebody gets an injury report, you see a Grizzlies PR tweet, like, oh, man. That's the most people think.
Man, I'm telling you, the worst notification I can get on my phone is the Grizzlies have released the following medical update. But that's what I think. They never released a medical update, and they're like, hey, medical update, he's doing great. He's got no issues. His leg is awesome. That's what they need to start doing. They need to just start having medical updates that are like, hey, this dude's healthy. Because every time you see that the Grizzlies have released a following medical update, you like, dang. Like, something. It's never like, hey, the Grizzlies have released a medical update. Oh, yeah, he's healthy now. Like, I feel like that isn't usually what happens. So, yeah, it's. I think that as they continue to get healthier, hopefully next season they can stay healthier just in general. Obviously, in the NBA, you're never going to be fully healthy. And I think with this team, which is one of the reasons why I want Gigi and Vince and all them to get as many reps as possible, is because it's very possible the next season, even if they don't have the same number of injuries, you're going to have to deal with some times where there's no Ja, no Bane, no Jaren, no Marcus Smart, no Luke Kennard, no Stephen Adams. Like, now, not all at once, hopefully, but it's like you will have games where whether it's they're sitting out for rest, they turn their ankle, they got to miss a week or two. Like, even if it's just small nicks and bruises, like, you are going to have a lot of guys that can fill in those roles. And I feel like the Grizzlies have had those kind of guys the last couple of years when they had DeAnthony Melton and Kyle Anderson and guys like that. And I think they still need to get back to that because they just haven't had that same level of player coming off the bench in those situations. So I think that, adding Vince and Gigi, obviously right now they're going to get a lot more minutes than they would, and they're going to be prioritized a lot more, which I think they should be. But it's like you're also preparing them for if there is an injury next season too, because no team ever goes the whole season without an injury. Somebody's going to be hurt at some time, whether it's 2 weeks, whether it's a month, like it's going to happen. So these guys are getting a taste of that so that they can step into these roles in the future as well. So that's why I always say, like, all this experience they're getting right now, I think in the long run is going to help them a ton. But yeah, I wanted to move on to the last thing we got to talk about, the trade deadline coming up in a couple weeks. And what will the Grizzlies do? I think there's a couple things that have been thrown around for some of the bench players. We've heard some stuff about John Conchar and possibly going to Boston. And apparently Boston could be willing to give up a top 20 protected first round pick, which basically would mean, look, that's what I'm saying. That I saw this. Shout out Parker Fleming. If it's not true, I blame Parker. Parker tweeted it. I'm sorry.
I'm about to talk to him. Hold on, he tell me about this. Hold on,
yeah. They said there is a possibility, and this is what I'll say. Shout out John Conchar, double the other night. But if you can get a first round pick, like, I think you can take that deal.
I'm doing that now. Sorry for yelling. I'm doing it now. Damn.
I do it right. Come on. Yeah. But another thing, they also said possibly Xavier Tillman. Cleveland is looking for a big because of what happened with Tristan Thompson. Because Tristan Thompson, he's a cheater. He got caught with PEDs. So he came out there and he's suspended for the next 25 games. So the Cavs are looking for another big man out there, and they said Damian Jones, maybe a couple second-round picks for Xavier Tillman, which I think that could be a good deal on both sides because it does give the Grizzlies some more picks to work with. And honestly, if you look at the way that they've been drafting in the second round, like, dang, I want more second-round picks than first-round picks maybe at this point. So if you can get 2 second-round picks, I think that's definitely a possibility. So those are a couple things they've been hearing. Obviously, they've been getting calls about Marcus Smart. Don't think Marcus Smart's going to be traded just because he's been hurt all season. They haven't really had a chance to see him with this group. I don't see that. Going to be getting calls about Luke Kennard. We'll see what happens with that. Also, definitely, I think they're going to be getting some calls about Steven Adams, Brandon Clark as well, even though they are injured. I would say between those, I would say it would be more likely that they trade Steven than Brandon, just because Steven Adams is a little bit older. And honestly, he might, since he's older, he's coming off a knee injury, so you're not really sure exactly what you're going to get from him. But that's also a thing where I think a lot of teams will go off with, like, his history of what he's done as a starter is good enough to where I think another team might be like, hey, even though he's injured, I have the faith that he'll come back healthy. And I still think if the Grizzlies did keep Steven Adams and he came back healthy, he would still help the team. But I think that's just kind of the stuff you got to explore right now at the deadline when you have the amount of injuries you have. And you got to think about it like the last couple of years. He's been hurt in the playoffs and stuff like that. So not really sure what you're going to get out of him health-wise. But when he's on the floor, you know what he's going to give you. So I think there's a lot of teams that could possibly look at him as a trade option as well. But not expecting them to do any big moves. Like I said, when it comes to Smart and Kennard, I'd be very surprised if they did something with them before the deadline. If anything, that would be maybe in the offseason. But I'd say Tillman, Conchar, somebody like that. If somebody wants to look at like Zaire or David Roddy, I think those are probably lower on the list on who can get traded just because of how much money they're making right now. They don't have as high salaries. So it might be kind of a little bit harder to trade those guys in terms of making the money work. But I think that when it comes to like Conchar, Tillman, somebody like that, a consolidation move that can open a roster spot so that you can maybe convert Gigi to a full-time contract and then also get a first-round pick or maybe a couple seconds back in return. I think that's probably the most you'll see them do. I'm not expecting like a big, like splashy trade or anything.
Yeah. And to go back to what you're saying about Parker, I realized I found a tweet. I realized that he said that in the tweet, but I focused on the Tillman thing. I didn't read the contract thing, so I apologize. But I do see it now. I didn't even peep it. Yeah, it's from Bobby Marks. So yeah, if that's on the table, that's a real trade. Yeah, go ahead and do that now. Shoot, maybe even do the Tillman deal. Like you said, I think that's really the kind of likely thing to happen is Conchar or Tillman get moved and you just open up a roster spot. Again, personally, I don't expect them to do too much at the deadline. I mean, again, like, talking about the Adams and the BC thing. And shoot, even another name that people have been mentioning is Luke. People gotta understand when we mention these names, we're not mentioning these names because we hate these players specifically, but it's just easy math. And when you look at the salary caps and salaries match, salaries do have to match when you make trades. And obviously, Jaren Bane ain't going nowhere. Smart's probably not going nowhere because you gave up 2 firsts for him. So where does that leave you at? The other guys that have been hurt on the IR and make like 12, 15 million a year. It's just simple math. So it's nothing personal. It's just the business of the league. And so for that spot in particular, I think, like you said, I do think that they would probably go Adams traded first over BC if they were to do a move, which, I mean, again, I do think they do need to, even if it's not at the deadline. I just don't think personally you should be depending on 2 guys coming off the same type of injuries they are, just running it back. I don't think they should run. I don't think they will run it back with this whole roster too. Like, even if they make those moves, there's some more moves that need to be made. I said it to Bryson before we started the pod. I need about 7, 8 people gone. I'm not going to list them all out, but you probably have a good idea of the 7 to 8 players I might be referencing. I'm not going to say the names. You just do. Listen, if you want to talk to me on Twitter, hey, I'll give you the names. But right now, I'm not going to do that. But either way, I don't expect all that to happen in the deadline. Like, that's just something. Like, that'd be crazy. Like, they're not going to do like what the Lakers did and turn their whole roster over at the deadline, especially with like Ja hurt and Bane hurt. They're not going to do that. But, I could see, like I said, I see a move to open up a spot. to get GG on the roster, because I'm pretty sure they don't probably want him to go into restricted free agency, even though I don't think somebody's going to offer something like $20 million per year deal. I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think there's a lot of cap space out there anyway. But I do think, they want to sign him and get him under contract. That way he doesn't even get into free agency. Like, get him on like a first round contract type of deal. And then after that, if they can somehow get a Adams deal, which I think they would do, or like get because personally I think they need 2 starters. So one starting at the center spot, you probably will look at that Adams type of thing, the move stuff, but then you probably have to move picks. And again, I don't think that happens at the deadline, especially when I think about certain people that I think they should target. There's only like a couple that might actually happen, even have a chance of happening. Like, again, I always say, like, a lot of moves to win championships or make the move the needle don't really happen at the deadline. They help your team out, but it's already after you got your team together. You know what I mean? You're usually not getting like 2 starters at the deadline or like some crazy all-star player at the deadline. I mean, we've seen it before in the past. Like the Bucks got PJ Tucker at the deadline, but that was like a buyout. Then obviously we saw with our team with Marc Gasol getting traded to Toronto, and they already contenders anyway, but that helped him. But he was more of a role player than like an all-star at that point. So little stuff like that helps. So, but yeah, ultimately for the context of this team, it won't. But yeah, I do expect some type of movement. But I am interested to see, what happens. Because again, like you said, with the second rounders, the way we've been drafting, it seems like they've been better with the second rounders. So they might want to collect up on those. And then I'm also interested to see if Zach Kleiman can do something I don't think he has done, which is like trade a first round pick that he's drafted. I mean, if we think about it, I don't think he's traded any of them. Now, granted, I'm not saying a lot of them have crazy value, but if they wanted to package something with those guys, I'd be interested to see if he actually does it, because I haven't seen him done it yet. And again, like I said, I gave him credit. Don't go, like you said, when we give these people criticism. I'm gonna give him a little bit credit, but for me, it's like the Kobe meme. More. I need more. This is good. Like, yeah, we got GG. Yeah, we got Vince. That's cool. Like, we got him on. That's cool. But the expectation is different for me. Even though it's not gonna happen this year. You talked about trying to win a championship. Everybody's talking about winning a championship. So more needs to happen for that to happen. So yeah, these moves are good, and I like them. I like most of the moves, like GG, Vince, even the Scotty Pippen stuff. But I need more to happen. That's not gonna be good enough. So the expectations are high. My standards high. Just because it's like that's what they presented. It'd been different if they said, "Oh, we're not trying to win." But nah, y'all said this publicly. Like, so, my expectations are a little bit different. So, and I'm gonna give him time. I'm gonna give him a little grace. Like I said, he got to the offseason. Now, let's revisit this like next, later in like October, and we got the same roster. Okay, you might hear me rant for like 30 minutes on this podcast. But for now, I'm not gonna do that. For now, I'm gonna give him some time, let it play out. Because he deserves that type of time. He hasn't been bad. Like, this team hasn't been bad this whole time. Everybody, like, they've had a down season, but it's not like everybody's been bad the whole tenure of their, run. So, they get grace to get better and improve. So, but I am interested to see how the deadline plays out, because we are fastly approaching it, low key. Like, it's gonna be here in like another week or two. Like, kind of crazy.
I mean, yeah, like, dude, the season is moving. I mean, as we're recording this, I think it's happening tonight, actually. So by the time we release this, we'll know who the all-star starters are. But like, it's time for like it's all-star game coming up very soon, trade deadline, all of that kind of stuff. So you're really starting to get into kind of the meat of the NBA season and getting really into it. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I feel like it's gone. Looking back on it, it's gone by pretty fast. I mean, like when you're going through those first 25 games, it did feel like very long. But looking back on it, it's like, dang, it feels like we've gotten here like pretty fast. And honestly, talking about this being a down season, yeah, it's definitely a down season. But especially when you consider the amount of injuries they've gone through, like the fact that, I mean, do I think they're going to make the play-in? Probably not. But the fact that that's even a question right now is kind of a testament to how hard the team is still working and everything like that. The fact that they're still within like 4 or 5 games of making that a possibility. Now, like I said, it's most likely not going to happen, but I do think they deserve some credit for that, because like they are going to be playing meaningful basketball for the rest of the season, right? And I think that's a big thing for the development of everybody. But yeah, as always, I want to say thank you to everybody who listened to this week's episode of the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I was joined by my co-host, Alex Winton. We're going to see you guys next week where we'll know the All-Star starters. We'll talk to you about the upcoming game against the Magic and their next couple games as well. But yeah, for all things Grizzlies, be sure to follow us on Twitter and follow Bluff City Media as well. We'll see y'all next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Gen Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and a comment wherever you download your podcasts. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co, where you will find comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports and how you can become an insider. We'll see you back here next time.